Brumadinho is a municipality in southeastern Brazil, home to just over 40,000 people. It's also home to the Córrego de Feijão iron mine and the site of one of the worst dam failures in history. But instead of holding back water, the Brumadinho Dam was holding back toxic mining byproducts called tailings. On January 25th of 2019, the Brumadinho Dam collapsed without warning. A massive mudslide engulfed the Iron Man while the employees ate lunch. It spread for miles through the forest before reaching the Paraopeba River. Stationary camera footage really puts the catastrophe into perspective. That's not just another mountainside you're looking at. The whole thing is a tailings dam, and it's just about to fail. The earthen wall collapses, leading to a powerful landslide that wipes out everything in its path. Mud and debris cascade over the tree line before making their way towards the mine. Here, you see the wall of debris push its way across the landscape as workers quickly escape. The dam was owned and operated by a company called Vale, the world's largest producer in iron ore and nickel. They're the same company responsible for another catastrophic failure in Mariana, Brazil, 4 years prior, but we'll touch on that later. Sadly, the Brumadinho collapse claimed 270 lives, mostly Vale employees who were enjoying their lunch when the dam failed. One man, Elias Nunes, made it out alive and sat down with the BBC to recount his harrowing story. "4 years before the Brumadinho Dam failure in Brazil, the same company was responsible for another catastrophic failure at a different tailings dam in Mariana, Brazil. On November 5th of 2015, the dam at the iron ore mining complex burst, releasing 43.7 million cubic meters of toxic tailings. The sludge infected the Doce River and eventually traveled 425 miles through several waterways. The sludge even reached the Atlantic Ocean 17 days after the collapse. By then, the damage was already done. Left with polluted water supplies, towns and villages up and down the Doce River were in a humanitarian crisis. The downstream villages of Bento Rodrigues and Paracatu de Baixo took the brunt of the damage, with 19 people losing their lives in the flood. Unfortunately, Bento is only accessible via unpaved backroads. Once they were covered in mud and sludge, firefighters couldn't get into the town to rescue anybody. The dam was owned by a company called Samarco. Meanwhile, Samarco is jointly owned by Vale and BHP Billiton, the Australian mining company. The government brought manslaughter and environmental damage charges against 21 Samarco executives a year later. Then, things got worse when a leaked report from 2013 indicated structural issues with the dam.
It may be the worst environmental disaster in British Columbia's history. Yesterday morning, 10 million cubic meters of wastewater containing dangerous chemicals poured into local waterways when the earthen dam surrounding a tailings pond collapsed. Here's how it unfolded. The breach happened at the Mount Polley mine in central British Columbia. Wastewater and sediment poured into Polley Lake, then moved down Hazeltine Creek into Quesnel Lake. Now there are bigger concerns about the contamination moving through the Quesnel Caribou water system all the way to the Fraser River. The CBC's Kirk Williams is in the affected area tonight. Kirk.
People here are gathering at a community hall tonight with major questions on their mind. The primary one, how did it happen?
When it comes to an environmental disaster at a mine, few top this. 10 million cubic meters of water in a tailing pond suddenly broke free, sending tons of mud, sand, and debris into a tiny creek, which became a torrent and flowed into Quesnel Lake. At a packed community meeting, the company said it takes full responsibility, but it doesn't know why it happened.
go. There's the rush.
But June 5th, 1976 was different. Tomorrow marks the anniversary of the Teton Dam collapse. Not a natural disaster, but a man-made one, and a tragic one. We continue to remember 45 years later. It took almost 4 years to build.
The water that cascaded down through there was unbelievable.
And mere hours to collapse.
About 300 feet of water in depth at that time, more than 300 feet. And it began to come through. I think at first it came through about a 60-foot wall, then 100 feet, and finally the whole dam on the north side gave way. And it's a scene that it just took your breath, and you wondered what's going to happen downstream.
What happened downstream was a wall of water that left the collapsed Teton Dam at 1 million cubic feet per second, hitting some places at least 30 feet high. By 8 p.m., the flow of water had nearly stabilized, but not before essentially destroying the communities of Rexburg and Sugar City. In the end, 11 people were killed, along with scores of livestock. It caused more than $400 million in property damage. Damages and death that could have been prevented. From 1972 to 1975, crews built the earthen Teton Dam 12 miles northeast of Rexburg in eastern Idaho. At 305 feet high, the reservoir it would create was supposed to provide flood control, hydropower, and supplemental irrigation water for more than 111,000 acres of farmland in the upper Snake River Valley. Finally finished, they began to fill it, a foot at a time in the fall of 1975. The following spring runoff doubled that rate, eventually rising to 4 feet a day. By early June, inspection crews found a couple of weak spots in the dam where water was seeping through. But as the water kept rising behind it, those spots were considered minor. That is, until 11:52 a.m., June 5th.
Put my son and my daughter in the car. They were 8 and 10, and we drove to Rexburg. We had 20 minutes warning, and my daughter looked in the rearview mirror, and she says, "Mother, look out the rearview mirror. You can see the water going across the road."
The collapse flooded 300 square miles. Homes and cars were carried away by the floodwaters, leaving 2/3 of Rexburg residents homeless. The water took 3 days to reach American Falls, some 70 miles away, where it stopped because of another dam already in place. Investigators later determined that the collapse was due to a series of design and construction flaws. Human error. Today, the spillway and the unmoved mound of dirt remain, a reminder of water's power and the tragic events of 45 years ago. After that day, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation instituted the Dam Safety Program, which is now used as a worldwide standard for every new dam built.
California failure. At 770.5 feet tall, the Oroville Dam in California is the tallest dam in the United States and one of the tallest in the entire world. But bigger doesn't always mean better, as the operators of this gigantic earth embankment soon found out. To convey water past the dam and prevent it from overflowing, Oroville used a service spillway measuring 300 feet long and 179 feet wide. But in February 2017, water was gushing at a standard rate of 50,000 cubic feet per minute down the spillway when operators noticed a section of the chute had been ripped away. And it wasn't exactly a small segment. Just look at how tiny those workers appear inside the spillway crater. You can see that water should be flowing down here, but the damage is directing the water off this way instead. The erosion of the spillway's foundation became so serious that operators decided to use a second emergency spillway for the first time since its construction in 1968. But erosion raised its ugly head once again, leading to an uncontrollable flow of water escaping the reservoir. Despite also using the damaged spillways to counter the rapidly rising water levels, an evacuation order was called which put at least 188,000 people from their homes. A combination of inexperienced engineering and a lack of safety measures led to this disaster, with repairs and recovery costing the U.S. an estimated $1.1 billion. Considering the Oroville Dam cost a whopping $123 million to build back in 1967, over $950 million today, the cost of the 2017 failure must have been a real bitter pill to swallow. Talk about paying double for your mistakes.